That was for the kids. Now we got to talk about the adults. We're going to talk about how we want to have goat kids. Kids that are the greatest of all time. Now we need to talk about what the responsibilities of adults are in that regard. Now, kids have a small responsibility that gets larger and larger as they get older and older, right? But what is our responsibility as adults? And you may be sitting here thinking, I've already done this. Well, yeah, you've already done this. But if you are here today, you have the burden of being a good example for these children. You have the burden of being a good example for these children. And so this is for all adults. This is for all adults. And those of you who are teenagers, who are about to grow up into adulthood, this is for you to be thinking about. So how, as adults, can we raise a world of goat kids? Okay? The greatest of all time. And I think that we're going to follow the same directions. We told the kids, listen up. Adults, number one, tell them something worth listening to. Tell them something worth listening to. If we want our kids to be the greatest of all time, if we want our kids to be godly children, if we want our kids to grow up and be successful and be powerful and be people who impact this world and be people who honor God with their words and with their thoughts and with their actions, be people who leave a mark in this world, if we want that, they've got to listen, but we have to tell them something worth listening to. We have to tell them something worth listening to. James chapter 1 that I talked about a moment ago is probably the greatest passage on this. James 1, 19 through 25. Listen to this. Know this, my beloved brothers. Let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. For the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Therefore, put away all filthiness and rampant wickedness and receive with meekness the implanted word which is able to save your souls. James is telling us we need to be quick to hear, slow to speak, and the thing that we need to hear is God's word, God's truth, God's good news for this world. God's good news for this world. And then he goes into how we need to hear it, how we need to listen to it. Verse 22, but be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks intently at his face, his natural face in a mirror. For he looks at himself and goes away and at once forgets what he was like. But the one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres, being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, he will be blessed in his doing. Friends, here is the important thing. Kids need to learn to listen. They need to learn to hear and do, just as we have had to learn to do that. To hear and do, especially hearing and doing God's word. But in order for this to work, they have to actually hear God's word. They have to actually hear God's word. They have to actually hear good advice. They have to actually hear good, pure, lovely, kind, graceful, wonderful, sweet things from the people that are speaking to them. If all they ever hear is hush, quiet, go to your room, they're not hearing what they need to hear. Adults, tell them something worth listening to so that they can be hearers of God's word and doers of God's word. Tell them something worth listening to. Read them Bible stories. Tell them the stories of the Bible. Talk to them about Jesus. Talk to them about their faith. Talk to them about their friends at school. Talk to them about the things that they learn at school. Talk to them about things worth listening to. It's the only way. It's the only way that we're going to have kids that are the greatest of all time. Adults, tell them something worth listening to. Number 2, adults, show them something worth watching. I told the kids, watch your role model. And I'm telling you, adults, teenagers, emerging adults, show them something worth watching. I know that's simple, but it's the truth. Show them something worth watching. Give them a good example. Give them something to look at and to emulate. These kids, they need role models. They need people to look at and say, I want to be like that. Because if they are on social media, or if they're watching modern entertainment, or they're being told, you need to be like this person. They're being told that every day. And I've got news for you. A lot of those people aren't good people. They're not people for them to emulate. Show them something worth watching. I want to read a passage to you that I hope scares you this morning. I hope it scares you this morning. It scares me, but sometimes we need to be a little scared. Matthew chapter 18. Matthew chapter 18, starting with verse 1. Says this, at that time the disciples came to Jesus saying, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? Who is the goat, the greatest of all time? And calling to him a child, he put him in the midst of them and said, truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Children have this innate ability to be what God considers great, and that is that they are good listeners and they are good doers, and they are humble, and they depend on the people that they're listening to and watching. Well, let's keep reading. Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me, but whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a great millstone fastened around his neck and to be drowned in the depth of the sea. Woe to the world for temptations to sin, for it is necessary that temptations come. But woe to the one by whom the temptation comes. And if your hand or your foot causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life crippled or lame than with 2 hands or 2 feet to be thrown into the eternal fire. And if your eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life with 1 eye than with 2 eyes to be thrown into the hell of fire. See that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I tell you that in heaven their angels always see the face of my Father who is in heaven. What do you think? If a man has 100 sheep and one of them has gone astray, does he not leave the 99 in the mountains and go search for the one that went astray? And if he finds it, truly I say to you, he rejoices over it more than over the 99 that never went astray. So it is not the will of my Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish. Friends, if we set an example for our kids, and that bad example leads them to do the same bad thing, to have the same bad quality, that's not a good thing. And I know you're sitting there, and I read this passage, and it freaks me out. Because I have so many qualities that sometimes are right on display for my kids. They see me get frustrated, they see me get angry, they see me lose control. They see me say things to people sometimes that I shouldn't say. And I'm always reminded of this passage. I'm always reminded of this passage because it's so important that we be a good example. It's so important. And this is not just for people who currently have children. This is for people who are going to be around children. If you come here, you're going to be around children. If you go outside your door, at some point, you're going to be around children. Adults, we have the burden. We have the burden of showing the little ones in this world something worth watching. Not just to not do bad things, but to show them what good things look like. What kindness and honesty and love and sacrifice look like. What the fruit of the Spirit looks like. Do they see love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control? Do they see those things? Because if we have God's Spirit, those things should be showing up in our lives. And we want them to later have God's Spirit, which allows those things to show up in their lives. I read that passage, and it's probably, for me, since I've become a father, it's become the most incriminating passage in the entire Bible for me. Because I'm around my kids a lot. I'm around kids, period, a lot. And I've got to show them something worth watching. And so I'm not sitting here pointing the finger at you. I'm pointing the finger at all of us. I mean, myself included. This is a great burden that as adults we have to bear. We have to bear it. But so that you don't leave here thinking, oh, there's no hope for me. I just need to stay in my house and never go out again and never go around children. I want to offer you some peace. And that is, adults, be sorry for your mistakes and learn from them. In the same way that children need to be sorry for their mistakes, adults need to be sorry for theirs as well. I spend a lot of time on a website that is mostly, it's a very, very large website. It's one of the most trafficked websites in the world. And the vast majority of the people that spend time on this website are atheists. Okay? They're not believers. They're not believers. And one particular part of this website is basically, it's a forum and a group of people who are talking who feel as though they have been wronged by their parents. Now, some of them may be making something up. Some of them may they may just be overly sensitive. I don't know. But the vast majority of these people in this little forum say that one of the things that they never saw their parents do was apologize to them. Even when it was clear that their parents made a mistake, that they did something wrong, that they were in the wrong, they never saw their parents say sorry. And friends, as adults, as parents, as accountable people, we are going to say things and do things that require us to say, I'm sorry. Especially when it comes to parenting. And I know that this is something that is inborn within our culture, the idea that basically as parents, we're the owners of the children. They're almost like property. We own them. And whatever we say or do goes. Brothers and sisters, we are responsible for them, but God is ultimately their creator. And as we're going to talk about in a minute, we're merely stewards of these children, of these blessings, until they're old enough to make decisions for themselves and become adults. And there are going to be moments where we mess up, and we need to model what it means to be someone who says they're sorry and asks for forgiveness and does better next time. And so I want you to listen to this verse. I want you to listen to this verse because I think that this will help you. Because I'm worried about me being a role model. I'm worried about the things that I say to my children. Do I talk to them about Jesus enough? I'm worried about this, but I want to share with you James chapter 4, verse 6. We've looked at this verse before. It says this, "But he gives more grace. Therefore, it says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble." Friends, it is better to be someone who in humility admits their faults than someone who in pride says, I didn't do anything wrong. It's better because God will give you more grace if you admit that you've been wrong. God will give you more grace. He gives grace to the humble, but resists the proud. Where there are going to be times that we mess up, that we make mistakes, that we don't model what it means to be like Jesus, that we don't show them that we don't tell them that. And we need to be humble and admit those things. And guess what? If we are, God gives grace. So I know you're sitting here thinking, well, I'm going to mess up, and I'm going to mess up, and I've made these mistakes, and I'm messing up, and I don't even have kids, or I don't even have kids at home. I've already done that. I've messed up so many times. Well, God's grace is great and vast and very, very large and deep. Remember what Peter asked, how many times do we forgive someone? Jesus said 70 times 7. As many times as it takes. Let's be, number one, adults who tell these little ones something worth listening to. Let's be adults who show them something worth watching. And let's be adults who model what it means to be sorry for our mistakes and learn from them. We are stewards of God's creation. That's what we are. We're stewards. We're managers. The word steward and manager in the Bible is usually the same word that's being used there. We are stewards or managers of God's creation, and especially the little ones that He blesses us with. They are ultimately God's little ones. They are ultimately God's creation, and we're in charge of them. We're in charge of them. I want to share one final passage with you, Luke chapter 12. Are we going to be good stewards, good managers? We can make that decision. Either be good stewards or not. Those are our choices. Luke 12, 35 through 48. Let's just listen to this, and then we'll close this lesson out. Jesus says, "Stay dressed for action, and keep your lamps burning, and be like men who are waiting for their master to come home from the wedding feast, so that they may open the door to him at once when he comes and knocks. Blessed are those servants whom the master finds awake when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will dress himself for service and have them recline at table, and he will come and serve them. If he comes in the second watch or in the third and finds them awake, blessed are those servants. But know this, that if the master of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have left his house to be broken into. You also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect." Peter said, "Lord, who then is the faithful and wise manager whom his master will set over his household to give them their portion of food at the proper time? Blessed is that servant whom his master will find so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions." This is the master. This is the steward. "But if that servant says to himself, 'My master is delayed in coming,' and begins to beat the male and female servants, and to eat and drink and get drunk, the master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and an hour when he does not know, and he will cut him in pieces and put him with the unfaithful. And that servant who knew his master's will, but did not get ready or act according to his will receive a severe beating. But the one who did not know and did what deserved a beating will receive a light beating. Everyone to whom much was given, of him much will be required. And from him to whom they entrusted much, they will demand the more. That's the point of this, is in that final passage. To whom much is given, much is required. And if we are people who are in the presence of children, and especially if we are people who have been blessed to be parents of little ones, we have a responsibility. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be seen neglecting that responsibility. That's a scary thing. So we have this choice. This is both a hopeful passage and a scary passage. Because he presents a choice. He says, look, you can be that servant, you can be that servant, that manager that is a good steward, that does what he's asked, or you can choose to not be that. Those are your choices. The one who chooses to do it says that Jesus or the master of the house will come in and he'll serve them. But the one who chooses not, it's not going to be good. Today, I want to leave you with this choice. As adults, as emerging adults, we're being watched. We're being listened to. These little ones are looking at us, and they're listening to us. And to a certain extent, we are stewards over them. And so my question to you today is, are we going to vow to be good stewards or poor stewards? And I know what we want to do. I know what we want to do. We've got to make that decision, though. I want to offer you an invitation today. An invitation to get anything off your chest that you need to get off. Maybe you need prayers. Maybe you need someone to pray for you, to hug you, think about you. Maybe you need encouragement. Maybe you want to sit down and study God's Word. I don't know what it is that you need. But we want to offer you this invitation today. And I want you to know, I did not intend for this message to be a downer. We get beat up 6 days of the week out in the world. And I want you to be lifted up. I want you to be encouraged. I want you to be built up here. But I want us to understand that we have a responsibility. We have a great responsibility, a great burden. And we're not always going to live up to that responsibility. But if we're humble, God gives more grace. So let's admit when we've messed up, and let's move on and do better. Do your best and forget the rest. If you need something today, we'd love to help you. We have a tradition here. As we sing a song, you can come up here and sit on one of these front pews and speak with me. You can speak to one of our shepherds in the back privately. You can come talk to me privately. You can send me a message, call me, whatever it is that you need. Don't hesitate. Won't you please come as we stand and as we sing.